I'm Emily Balsley, and I'm an illustrator, muralist, and maker living in Madison, Wisconsin. For today's video, we are going to learn how to make t-shirt yarn. T-shirt yarn is exactly what it sounds like. It is yarn that is made out of old t-shirts. It's a perfect example of upcycling, which is when you take something that you most likely already have laying around your house and turning it into something completely new. In this case, we're making some yarn that can be used for lots of projects that you would normally require yarn for. Crocheting, knitting, I've made rag rugs using it, pot holders, baskets or planters, so lots of fun things that you can do using old t-shirts made into t-shirt yarn. To make t-shirt yarn, you're going to need a few things. First of all, print out a copy of this PDF that is actually at the bottom of this video. It's essentially a step-by-step sheet on how to break down all of the steps for making t-shirt yarn. This is just a nice reference that you can have in lieu of watching this video over and over. Just take this wherever you are. So, PDF, you will need an old t-shirt and a scissors. Super simple. If you want to make it a little bit easier for yourself, if you have access to something called a rotary cutter, which looks like this, it has a round blade that you can engage, and you actually roll it along your surface to cut in lieu of cutting like a scissors. It just makes it a little bit easier. You can find these at craft stores. I got mine at Joann Fabrics. And if you are going to use a rotary cutter, I would also recommend getting a cutting mat to put underneath your t-shirt to protect your work surface from getting gouged and scratched. But again, you do not need the rotary cutter or the cutting mat. You really only need the scissors. It'll just take a little bit longer this way, but it will absolutely work. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, let's make some t-shirt yarn. Again, 3 things that you're going to need. You're going to need this sheet printed out that has all of the step-by-step instructions. You're going to need a scissors and an old t-shirt. All right, let's get started. First things first, we're going to cut off both sleeves and the bottom hem of your t-shirt. When you cut off the sleeves, just cut just inside that seam. Toss that aside, you're not going to need that. Then your bottom hem, again, cut right above that seam. And none of this has to be perfect, just keep that in mind. Once we have all of our t-shirt yarn cut up, we're going to be pulling it a bit, which will kind of turn it into little tubes. So if you have any kind of jagged edges, you're not going to see them. So don't worry about being super perfect. Okay, we cut off both sleeves and the bottom hem. Next step, we're going to cut straight across underneath the armpits. So I'm going to turn my shirt onto the side and then straight across. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting the shirt cut up into just large, fairly rectangular sections. Okay, so you can set that bottom large section aside for a moment. We're going to focus on this top section. All right. I'm just going to cut a straight line from the top of the shoulder straight down, just cutting off that curve. Same thing on the other side. Okay. And then I'm going to cut straight across the top of the shoulders. Again, we're just trying to make this as rectangular as possible. All right, now you're left with 2 pieces. One is a rectangle. I'm scared of this little guy. Boop. Okay, and then the front is actually a smaller rectangle, I'm going to cut one more straight line just to get rid of that collar. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, if you have a rotary cutter, this part is so much easier because you can actually just go zoop and cut it straight across. All right, so we have two rectangles. One is slightly bigger than the other. What we're going to do now is, so the goal in making t-shirt yarn is to make one long piece of yarn. So the more we can keep it intact without tying loose ends together, the better. To keep this as one long piece, we're actually going to cut like a zigzag. So we're going to start at the bottom, we're going to cut up, stop before you get to the top, then start at the top, go down, but stop before you get all the way to the bottom, so on and so forth. So you're kind of making this zigzag, and I would cut about, let's see, maybe 1.5 inches or so wide. So cut all the way up, stop right before you get to the top. Okay, well, you know, I'm going to do all of the bottoms first, then I'll flip it. So I'm going to actually skip about 3 inches. And then I'm going to flip this whole thing and go straight down the middle of what's remaining. So this time we're going to start here. Do your best. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You will not be able to see the imperfections. Now you're probably seeing what's going to happen. Now we have one long piece that's connected, okay? So you can set that aside. We'll come back to that. We're going to do the same thing with this smaller rectangle. Okay, again, one long piece, put aside. Okay, bring that larger section back that we had put aside. So this is the bottom of the t-shirt. The top and the bottom are open. The sides are currently closed. What we're going to do is we're actually going to cut one side off because we want that edge to be open. So just cut straight up. Again, don't worry about perfection here. Okay. We're going to turn it now. So the open edge is at the top, okay? The closed edge is at the bottom. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cut strips starting from the bottom, starting from the closed edge, 1.5 inches, almost to the top. Again, we're just going to stop just shy of that top edge. We're not going to do a zigzag this time. We're just going to do all of the cuts from the bottom. Okay, kind of straighten all of these little tentacle legs out a bit, because that will make the next step a little bit easier. All right, again, because we want to keep this all as one long length, this next step is imperative. What we're going to do, because we have an open end up here, we're going to alternate. We're going to cut all the way through, starting with just the top. Then the second one, we're going to do just the bottom. The third one, we're going to go back to the top. Fourth one, only the bottom. So we're going to alternate top to bottom. And you'll see what happens. So top first, okay, then the bottom. Skip one, back to the top. Okay, skip one, bottom. Okay, so when we pick it up, it is all one long piece. Now we have one big section, and then we have those two little sections from the top of the shirt. Okay, to connect them, I'm going to show you a really easy technique. You need the end of two pieces. Okay, what you do is you're going to cut a slit in both of the ends. To make a slit really easy, you're actually going to fold it back on itself a bit and just cut a little notch so when you open it, there's a slit. Okay, so do the same with your other piece that you're joining. Okay, to join them, you put one through the other, just a bit, and then you take the tail of the one that went in, thread it through its own hole, and pull it all the way through. So you get to the end, and then you can kind of pull it tight, just like that. Now you might find that at this point it's fairly strong, but there are some weak points that could tear apart. So just kind of be aware of that. Don't pull super, super hard. Okay, so now we have one long piece of t-shirt. Now to make it into yarn, the next step is going to be actually pulling it. Now I mentioned pulling it a couple times earlier. And what I mean by that is just gently kind of giving it a tug, and you can see how the printing kind of rolls to the inside. So give it a little tug. I usually go in between sections where these little cuts are. Again, just to hopefully ensure that it doesn't tear apart. Just give it a little tug, tug, tug. Okay, now you have a pile of t-shirt yarn. See how it kind of rolls up into these little tubes? Super slick. If you want to be nice and neat, you can just roll it up, but absolutely not necessary if you're planning on using it right away. I just find it, keeps it a little bit neater. Tucking that in, and you have yourself a ball of t-shirt yarn. Hooray! So have fun. And there you have it. Now you have your very own ball of t-shirt yarn. Pretty easy, right? Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day.